Hello, everybody, and welcome to the SoxProspects.com podcast, the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you for listening. My name's Chris Hatfield. I am the executive editor of Sox Prospects. Rolling solo this episode, bringing you a special edition of the show. We are joined this edition by MLB Pipeline, MLB.com, MLB Networks, Jim Callis for our annual check-in following the draft to get his thoughts about this year's draft class, about the folks that, the 20-ish players that are going to be entering the farm system, some of whom have signed already as of the time you're listening to this so far. But we're going to get his thoughts on that, his thoughts on the system as a whole across the game. Always great to talk to Jim. But of course, before we go any further, there's a few things you can do to help support the show. First, spread the word, tell a friend, tell a relative, tell someone you talk to about once a year on the record about the same sort of thing that you enjoy. You can tell them about the show as well. You can also help by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to the show. And of course, we are wrapping up. It's the last couple days for you to support the Sox Prospects donation drive. We are very, 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 very close to hitting our goal and surpassing it, maybe hitting a stretch goal after that. You can support us by either going to soxprospects.com/donate and making a one-time donation, or you can support us, as we always say, on patreon.com/soxprospects. Get some neat perks for your per episode pledge. Very much appreciate everyone who supports us over on patreon.com/soxprospects. This episode, we're going to just go ahead up front and thank this episode's $5 level supporters. That includes Forrest Perkins, Mark Herman, Brian Cowan, Andrew K, Jeff Harwood, Dusty G, Michael Murphy, Pavel, Jordan Shabbat, and Mike Kawano. Thank you all for your support. And actually, we should add one new member at that level. That's Brennan. Brennan, thank you for joining the Patreon crew, the Patreon group at the $5 level. So we appreciate your support. As far as things going on, we're going to throw it to the interview with Jim shortly. Of course, not a great time at the major league level. Red Sox have gone 2-7 coming out of the break. Not what you want to do, but the trades have started. The biggest one, of course, being the Danny Jansen trade. Of course, the day before, the Red Sox traded for James Paxton from the Los Angeles Dodgers, giving up Moises Bolivar, third baseman who was in the DSL. Not a big bonus prospect, was hitting third for his DSL team. I think he was on DSL Blue. I don't quite remember. Don't quote me on that. But playing third base, was doing pretty well down there, but, a DSL flyer, 17-year-old type of guy that you're always willing to give up in that sort of situation. I know a lot of people are down on the James Paxton acquisition, but look, his problem this year has been the fastball. If he's able to correct the fastball, and it looked like in his last start against the Red Sox, it showed signs of life. I think this is really kind of an in Andrew Bailey we trust kind of acquisition, because if you can get Paxton to even be a true number 5 starter, not even a serviceable number 5, solid number 5 to 4 starter, that's an acquisition that's worth it. Pushes Cooper Criswell to the bullpen. I saw a lot of people saying, well, Criswell's been better. Look, Criswell's last start was great. Criswell's been pretty up and down this year, and Criswell's not necessarily a guy I want in the rotation down the stretch for this club. Personally, I'd love a second starter. I think you've got workload concerns for Tanner Houck and Cutter Crawford. We saw Tanner Houck tonight. The location just wasn't there. The command just wasn't there. It's a mechanical issue. He said hopefully they can get it straightened out, but I would not mind having another option to start games. Maybe you push Nick Pivetta into the bullpen. Maybe you go 6-man rotation for a little bit here to try and get guys some extra rest. We've seen how that's helped with guys like Cutter Crawford, how it's helped with guys like Brian Bayo when it gives them a chance to get an extra couple of days to work on some things. I'd love to see them get another starting pitcher. I have a feeling that's not going to happen, but we'll see. Of course, the Danny Jansen trade, I think a lot of people were up in arms about that one at first because people thought that this was the right-handed bat the Red Sox were going to go get. I don't think it is. I think that this was just an opportunity. There was a report that came out that the Red Sox had been in on Nate Pearson. They were going to send Emmanuel Valdez to Toronto for Pearson. I think, sometimes when you're talking to teams, you're working through potential deals. I think what Craig Breslow saw there is an opportunity to upgrade the number 2 catcher spot behind Connor Wong from Reese McGuire, who, look, he's not bad behind the plate. calls a good game, handles his staff well. He's been one of the worst hitters in baseball since April 9th. He's got a sub 500 OPS since April 9th. Upgrading from Reese McGuire to Danny Jansen, who granted has not been great this year, but in the past has been much better, especially at the plate. He's also good behind the plate. I like it as a theory. Now, as for the deal itself, the Red Sox gave up Portland infielder Edinson Paulino. I always say it like Ian does. Greenville infielder Cutter Coffee, and Salem, technically Salem right-hander Gilberto Batista, although Batista did not actually pitch for Salem after getting promoted from the FCL. Strikes me as a bit of a heavy cost for a 2-month backup catcher rental, or maybe not backup. I think he's kind of going to be more of like not a number 1, but not a number 2 either, kind of that 1.5. I think he'll DH sometimes like he did tonight. He'll catch sometimes, pushing Connor Wong to maybe first or second to keep Wong's bat in the lineup. I think the Red Sox are a little worried about wearing Wong down. Wong is catching 3 and 4 games in a row right now, and lately he's been struggling a little bit more at the plate. I think they're maybe worried about workload there. Getting a guy they're comfortable with behind the plate a little more so than McGuire, I think was a good move. Look, it was a heavy cost. We had Paulino 15th in the system. We had Coffee 28th, although honestly, after his great June, Coffee had really slowed back down again. He was probably going to drop back down into the 30s if I were to bet on it. And Batista was unranked. He had been ranked 1 month in his Sox prospects, in his Red Sox career. He was ranked 60th for 1 month. So, look, it's a heavy cost, I think. I think it's a situation where if you came in from the future and told me that the Red Sox don't wind up not missing any of those guys, I would believe you. If you came from the future and told me, hey, Chris, the Red Sox are going to kind of regret a little bit giving up Coffee and Paulino, and Batista winds up making it to the high minors or something, I don't know. I would believe that too. I think it all is going to depend on what Jansen does for you down the stretch. If he does what he did tonight on the regular, it's worth it. Look, I think the system is at a point where, yes, it was a high cost to pay, but they're also kind of not going to really miss those guys. Paulino was your what? He's certainly behind Meyer, certainly behind Campbell. He was your 3rd or 4th best infielder, depending on how you feel about Blaze Jordan in Portland. Cutter Coffee, as far as Greenville goes, was probably behind Mikey Romero. And they have some other guys there that maybe I liked Coffee better than, but Luis Ravello's there, Abram Liendo's there, and they just activated Justin Reimer, who we're really not haven't seen yet. These were trades from places of depth. The infielders in kind of low A through double A, they have a lot of them. Paulino in some organizations would have been playing shortstop all year. He barely saw it this year. Coffee was playing third base. In some organizations, he would have been a regular shortstop. And he was playing shortstop, 2 games to every 3 games he played at third or something like that. And he was playing more short earlier in the year than later in the year. But, look, it's a little bit of a high cost for a 2-month rental. I would have loved it if it was maybe 1 player fewer. But that said, it's not something that's, got me calling for Craig Breslow's head either. So that's all my thoughts on the trades. And I think we'll have more of a trade deadline breakdown after Tuesday when the trade deadline ends. So you'll get that. But, we'll see what happens. Are the Red Sox going to go get another right-handed bat? We hear Tristan Casas is going to start a rehab assignment on Tuesday this week, which is tremendous news for them, even if, give him a week or 2, probably a couple weeks given the amount of time he's been out. That's a thumper right there. That's a huge guy to put back in the lineup. How they handle second base going forward is going to be interesting. And look, can Casas play every day once he gets activated is a question too. So this might be kind of a situation like I remember when they acquired Kyle Schwarber, and it was like, well, where do you play him? And it's like, well, let's get him in the lineup and we'll figure it out from there. Do they go and do that kind of a move to get a right-handed bat? Potentially. I think they could. That kind of Jamie Westbrook roster spot, I think, is one that you could really improve upon. I wonder what they do with Dom Smith when Casas gets back. Smith hasn't been bad, especially lately. So there's a lot of moving parts here. I'm interested to see how it plays out. I'm interested to see what the costs are for players down the stretch. The one thing we haven't talked about is their bullpen, which is hurting right now. They're kind of running on fumes, and they really do need that sort of setup guy. Man, the costs for some of these trades. You look at the Jason Adam trade, you look at the Estevez trade to Philadelphia. Those are some steep costs. Are you willing to give up, maybe a David Sandlin type for a 2-month reliever rental? That's you're gonna have to give up like maybe a Sandlin and a Blaze Jordan or something like that for a 2-month rental or reliever rental. Really depends on the player. Maybe not. I'm interested in seeing what Breslow is willing to do on that score. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see going forward. So at any rate, trade deadline coming up. It's going to be worth keeping an eye on. Also, signings. When we're about to talk draft with Jim, the Red Sox did announce several draft signings. None of the big ticket guys have signed yet, but the Red Sox announced 13 signings and one undrafted free agent. The Red Sox announced the signings of Brandon Neely, the 3rd rounder out of Florida, Zach Erhard, the 4th rounder out of Oklahoma State, Brandon Clark out of JUCO in Florida in the 5th. They announced their 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 9th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th round picks have signed. If you go to soxprospects.com/dh.htm or just go to Sox Prospects and click on draft history, you'll see it. The 13 draft picks, as well as undrafted free agent Calvin Bickerstaff out of Kent State. For the day 2 guys that are announced, all of them were under slot. So it really does look like the Red Sox are going to be able to get all 20 of their draftees signed. That's what Alex Spear reported. And if you look at it, it does make sense with what they have left. In addition to these guys who were all down in Fort Myers for their signing, Peyton Tolley and Conrad Kaysen, the 2nd and 8th round picks, were at Fenway this week, probably in Boston getting their physicals. For guys who get the larger signing bonuses, my guess is both of these guys are going to get over $1 million. They bring them into Boston for their physicals to make sure before they sign them that everything is cool. Whereas a guy who maybe is getting, the $400,000-$500,000 signing bonus, they get their physicals down in Fort Myers, and typically, as long as everything's looking more or less okay, they sign. Montgomery, no news yet, but I would expect him to sign as well before the deadline. And the deadline for draft signings is August the 1st. So the trade deadline is first, then the draft signing deadline is a couple days later. So we'll see. Like I said, my expectation is they get everybody signed from this draft class. I would expect probably 1 or 2 more undrafted free agents. I usually they get a catcher as an undrafted free agent. I know that they signed Hudson White, the 9th rounder out of Arkansas. I would expect them to sign one more catcher as well. Just you need catchers down in Fort Myers to catch all these arms that they're signing. So I would expect maybe one more there. We'll see what else happens. But if they're signing everybody here, maybe not too many more undrafted free agents, just because there's only so many spots on the domestic reserve list. The Red Sox did release a couple of FCL arms, Yanfi Rodriguez and William Colmenares. Neither terribly surprising. Honestly, both of them had not great years down in the FCL. So that opened a couple of spots on the domestic reserve list, as well as, of course, the trade for Jansen. That opened 3 right there as well. So, and of course, the final transaction that's happened since the last episode, Justin Reamer was activated and sent to Greenville. And actually, I guess there were a few more promotions to Salem, which I don't know that we talked about last episode, but just to finalize all the promotions, the Red Sox promoted Juan Valera, Jefferson Vargas, the since traded Gilberto Batista, and Franklin Arias to Salem. They also promoted to Greenville Elmer Rodriguez and Noah Dean, and they promoted from Greenville to Portland David Sandlin and Connolly Early. So mostly pitcher promotions, but Franklin Arias going to Salem is really cool. Fifi agrees over here in the corner. I think he's almost certainly going to jump into the top 10 this month of our rankings. The question is where. So that should be his rise kind of over the past month and a half, 2 months has been kind of exciting. Squares with what we saw out of him, the DSL, and he's doing it stateside, and he's been doing it in Salem since he's gotten there. I think he's already got 2 home runs in like 3 or 4 games. So solid week in the system, a lot of news, a lot of happenings. We're going to be back again this week as well with another episode talking about the trade deadline. Thank you all for downloading. If you want to follow us on Instagram and Twitter and wherever social media you're on. You can follow the site at Sox Prospects. You can follow me at SP Chris Hatfield. Follow Ian at Ian Cuddle. That's IANCUNDALL. And of course, thank you to the Ludlow Thieves for our intro and outro music. All the Money, great track. Always love hearing that on the intro and outro. And yeah, I think that will do it. So I'm going to throw to our interview with Jim Callis now. And I'm not going to see you on the other side. We're just going to go out from there. So thank you all for listening. We'll be back in your eardrums very, very soon with our trade deadline special. All right, well, it's July, folks, and you know what that means. Every year we're joined by our good friend Jim Callis from MLB.com, MLB Pipeline, MLB Network, the MLB family of media out there for all of us to enjoy and consume. And it's always a pleasure to have you back on, Jim. You might actually, at this point, be pulling ahead of Alex.
Really?
In number of appearances. Yeah, we haven't had him on in a
Is
hot
he ghosting
minute.
you? Is Alex ghosting you?
No, well, he's got his own show now, too, is the thing, with Tom Karen from Nesson, 310 to
I have my own show, too. We have the Pipeline
That's
podcast.
True.
So
That's true. That's a very good point. Well, we always appreciate that, to come on and talk draft, talk farm system, talk all things Red Sox farm like we do here. But we love getting your take here. And I get you all to myself this year because Ian is off in Pittsburgh scouting Paul Skeens. Yeah, exactly.
And partying.
Exactly. And partying, of course. But I mean, I guess, let's start with the stuff that's happened in the near term here with the draft, because that's kind of the start of things. Then we can expand it out to the bigger picture for the Red Sox here, because I think it's a really fun and interesting time to talk this farm system in the context that, both you and we have of having followed the system and reported on the system for a long time, but just where it's at. But as far as this draft, obviously, it kind of, I'm sure some people will look quick and call it, Braden Montgomery and everybody else. But I guess, what was your take on this year's draft class for the Red Sox and how it, turned out in a year where, granted, most everyone is the same folks they had last year, but you've got someone new in charge, and it did seem like there was a little bit of influence there.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I wouldn't say it's Braden Montgomery and everybody else. I mean, I do think Braden Montgomery was a guy they didn't necessarily expect to get to him at 12.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people thought he was going to be top. Like, you knew somebody, there was kind of a consensus top 10, and you knew somebody might fall. And there were, you had Christian Moore, who I kept thinking the Red Sox were going to take at 12.
Mm-hmm.
Cut a deal to go earlier in the draft, and he went 8th. So that was one guy who pushed people down a little bit. And then the Nationals took Seaver King, which wasn't expected. So 2 guys got pushed down. So like the Red Sox, it's funny. Like, I don't think it was as simple as, hey, there's a consensus top 10 guys, and we'll just take whichever one's there if one gets there. But that's kind of how it played out. And I think that was a pretty, I mean, not that he was like an unbelievable steal, but I think it's kind of like when Kyle Teal was there for him last year.
Right.
Where it's just like, hey, this guy probably shouldn't be here. Like, we're in a good spot. Like, we'll take advantage. Like, it's weird. Like, so, like, first impressions of the draft for these guys play, it's always colored. And I'm not saying, like, draft rankings, ours, anybody else's, they're not perfect. Like, even teams would tell you their draft boards aren't perfect. But anyway,
sure.
My impressions always are, I look at where guys got picked relative to where we had them ranked. And, like, none of the Red Sox next 4 picks, like, they took Peyton Tolley 37 spots higher than we had him ranked. They took Brandon Neely 107 spots higher. They took Zach Earhart, can't speak, 106 spots higher. They took Brandon Clark 29 spots higher. So, like, in my mind, it's not like, oh, those are particularly good values. The guy who intrigues me is Conrad Kaysen. And, like, Red Sox have this model. They did it with Brooks Brandon a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's a model, but, like, where they get a below slot guy, like, toward the end of day 2, don't let him get 3. Like, they make sure they get their man. And Conrad's, like, super, super interesting. And I don't think it's far-fetched to suggest he might wind up being the second best player they drafted. Like, it's very possible.
Sure.
But so while it wasn't Montgomery and everybody else, I do think, like, the discussion really centers around, hey, Braden Montgomery lasted till pick number 12.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, as soon as he got picked, it was a lot of, it happened again. Holy crap. Right. Like it happened with Teal last year. Although last year.
With Meyer too, like, Marcelo should not have been there at 4. Like the Red Sox, it's kind of like the Cardinals had this going for a while. The Red Sox just kind of like look up and it's like, hey, this guy shouldn't be here. We'll take him.
Yeah, well, and part of that too, though, like, and I said this on Twitter that night, or X, whatever we're calling it at this point, but
I call it
um,
Twitter.
yeah, it's part of it is, yeah, they're getting lucky that these guys fall to him, but part of it is, being smart enough to pull the trigger at the same
Yeah.
time, right? Because those other teams aren't drafting the guy, and sometimes, look, sometimes you get Marcelo Meyer or Kyle Teel, sometimes you wind up with Jay Groom, right? Where it maybe
Yeah.
didn't necessarily work out.
I mean, Jay Groom
Perfectly.
was supposed to be a steal too. You're
Yeah.
100% right. Like they were fortunate that both the Angel, like, and you, like again, you don't know which guy was going to fall. You kind of figured that there would be a couple teams in front of them that would like, look, the Angels saved money on Christian Moore and they paid Ryan Johnson the supplemental second round, and they're going to give. I don't know that he's officially signed contract, but their 11th rounder is going to get almost $2 million.
Yeah,
so
it's in the tracker that he got 1.96. Yeah. So
and then you have with the Nationals, they took Seaver King, but they just gave their second round pick $3.8 million. So like those were calculated moves. And
sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, I think the Red Sox, I haven't talked to them since the draft, but I'm you guys may have, I'm sure the media has, like I'm sure Devin Pearson and company did not expect that Braden Montgomery would be on the board for them at number 12. And people ask all the time, I don't think his ankle injury that he suffered in the super regionals had anything to do with it. I think it was just as simple as there were a couple teams that cut deals. And I think once you got past the first kind of consensus top 2 or 3 players, the other 7 guys in that top 10, it was just different orders for different teams. And he just wound up not quite being the number 1 guy for any of the other teams that took one of them.
How quick of a guy do you think? How quick do you think he'll be a guy who moves through the system? I mean, are we looking at potentially the kind of Teal path of, what is he, first full season and he's, knocking on AAA? Like, do you think that especially given the ankle, is the other part?
I'll say no,
right?
because of the ankle. Like he's not going to get a chance to play this year like Teal did. And if I remember, Teal got to AA at the end of last year, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, like so Montgomery's not going to get any of that. Like,
yeah.
And the other thing is, there were 6 college hitters kind of in that group of top 10 players, and Montgomery, it's not like excessive, but he had the highest strikeout rate of any of those guys. And it's weird. Like the biggest question I think people have about him is his left-handed swing and production is so much more. I was say so much more good, so much better than his right-handed swing and production. Like to the point where I've had some people suggest maybe he should stop switch hitting. So like I don't know if there's gonna be a little bit of like I don't think he's as polished a hitter, quite as polished hitter as Kyle Teel. Like I'm making say he's not like a big guy. He's not like he's gonna strike out 28% of the time, and you're like, oh my God, is this guy gonna hit? But he just might be more. He might be more of an average hitter with plus power than like a solid hitter with solid power, which is what I think Teel is. So like it might take him a little more time to adjust. Plus, with the ankle injury, and again, I don't know exactly what the timetable is. My guess is because he won't get experience this year, they'll probably take it fairly easy on him to start next season.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially without getting that, and it's not like there's the FCL that you could throw him into either, right? So it's extended or send him to Salem, which.
Well, I think he'll go to Salem. Like I mean, again, assuming he's healthy, I just don't think they're going to try to push him because he's not getting he's not going to get, if he were healthy, he could play for like 6 weeks in the minors and then they'd really know where he was at. Like his acclimation, and again, I have no idea of his timetable. I don't know if he's going to be ready for instructional league. I don't know. I don't think they would just send him to the fall league. Like that would be it'd be challenging, but he's just not going to get onboarded like a typical player. So I think they'll probably play it a little bit more conservative with him. But I mean, it's real power. He's athletic. It's, he was up to 96 on the mound. So, I mean, it's a classic right field profile. Like I said, I think really and it's really good makeup. Everybody loves the kid. I think the question is like that right-handed swing. Like, is he going to keep hitting right-handed? Like what's going to go on with that? That's kind of the biggest question.
Yeah, I mean, there was even a report the night of that he might have given up on hitting right-handed already, but then on the media calls. I mean, and he said at the draft, and I think, and Devin said that he's still switch hitting. I mean, how long do you give him to go continue switch hitting before you even have the conversation? Probably at least, through next season, I would think, right?
I would think like I don't like it. There's no reason not to see. I don't like it. Like, I always think it's a big mistake when you take a guy, like, especially in the first round, and you're like, oh, we're going to have to do this change. Well, it's like, why are you taking him in the first round?
Right.
Like if there's a pitcher, like, it's one thing if you're tweaking pitch shapes and that type of thing, but like, we don't like, we're going to have to like alter his delivery or raise his arm angle. And it's like, well, if you're doing that, you might hurt the guy, or the stuff might not be like the Red Sox didn't do this. But like everybody always talks about, oh, low slots, like Tanner Houck, low slot. Like, I don't know. And it's like if you were going to take Tanner Houck and be like, oh, we got to raise that arm slot. Like, and I didn't think him to try to throw like a four seamer when he was an A-ball, and it didn't go well.
It's funny because when you were saying that, that's the guy that came to mind, because that was one of Brian Bannister's first projects.
That's right. So I guess they did try to tinker with him a little bit. It didn't.
They didn't tinker the arm slot. I think it was trying to get him more north-south instead of east-west on the mechanics,
which is fun.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, I could see on the pit, like if you're tweaking pitches, yes, but like if you're altering mechanics of guys or making radical changes, like, hey, stop switch hitting,
right?
Like, I think you got to see how it plays first before you, because I mean, look, Tanner Houck. I mean, people are like, oh, sinkers are for suckers. Well, his sinker is pretty good,
right?
And like his sinker slider approach worked for him in college, and it's worked for him in the big league. So, so anyway, I don't think they'll do anything major. They shouldn't. Like, again, I'm not sure it will work, but why wouldn't you find out and see what it looks like?
And we're also talking a guy they took 12th, who was a top 10 talent, versus Houck, who they took in the, I think 24th. So, yeah, so it's a little different there. Again, then I guess looking at the rest of the class, the next few guys you look at, they went very heavily college this year, but that was kind of the trend across the draft, right? That it was just that the number of high school picks was down, I believe.
The number of picks was down, although a lot of guys are getting paid. But yeah, like I mean, look, they're going to pay Kason. They haven't really had, I don't think, any signings news. Like,
there was a report they're going to sign everyone today, and I haven't seen anything. Of course, I'm talking with one of the people I would have been seeing it from. So,
yeah. Well, no, I was going to say too, like they're one of the teams that likes to announce everybody at once. So like, I'm sure the guys are done. So I was going to say, I was like, Connor Kason's going to get paid. I don't know if it's seven figures. I don't know if it's like,
we think seven figures. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, but I don't know. Like, but then is it 1 million? Is it one? He's going to get paid. But yeah, I mean, they took one shot on a high school guy and then did go kind of heavily college.
Yeah. The last time they took this many college guys in a row to start a draft was 2004, the Dustin Pedroia draft, which is kind of wild to think about.
Did they get Abe Alvarez in that draft too, or was that different?
I think Alvarez was the prior year.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Because that was like the David Murphy, Matt Merton.
Yeah, the one where I think that one they literally went all college, where the Pedroia draft, it was just like the first 10 rounds or something. They eventually did take some high school guys.
I'm looking at the names here, though. It's like the Dustin Pedroia pick you like.
I think if I recall right, there was at least one good pitching coach in that draft. Is that the Hottovy draft? Yeah.
So did they not sign Steve Pierce? Did he go back to school?
He went back to school. Yeah, he didn't sign.
You know who the guy was they gave all their money to that year? Well, that was
Mike Rozier. Yeah.
Yeah, that one didn't work out too well.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. We had some interesting conversations.
I'm looking at the Sox prospects draft page and
oh yeah.
So yeah, oof.
RJ Swindle was the first professional baseball player I ever interviewed.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And Lowell, the great rock and roll
Bo
Swindle.
Mills are both in here. Bo Mills became a first-round pick.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was an interesting year. That was, I mean, back, and it's just funny to see a 50-round draft that they then had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 undrafted free agents and however many draft picks they signed. Yeah. Wild. Well, the draft is a lot different these days, folks. If anyone out there's got some time to kill, go through our older draft history pages and see how the draft used to work if you're unfamiliar. Dustin Pedroia getting $575K is their, I guess, second round pick, but very different. But with the college thing,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think do you think it's because a lot of these guys are arms too? I mean, I think a lot of people assumed that Breslow was going to come in and focus on arms to build up that side of things. Because certainly, if you look at the farm system, the strength is on the offensive, or I guess position player side of the ball.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that's just how the draft board fell? Do you think that's a focus they had? Do you think it came from up top? Do you think it's just how the draft class was?
I think it's kind of a mix where I think I'm gonna guess again. I haven't talked to him since the draft, but like I'm gonna guess that like when they're sent their board, like the tie would go to the pitcher. But I don't think they were just gonna force pitchers per se.
Yep.
And I mean, you could argue Braden Montgomery could pitch too, but
I guess that's true.
But yeah, I mean, look, it's Breslow's strength. He had a lot of success with the Cubs. He turned their pitching development around. Like you just mentioned, like I thought coming into the year, the Red Sox group of pitching prospects was one of the thinnest. We don't rank them, but it was one of the thinnest in baseball in terms of pitching prospects.
Sure.
So it's an obvious need. And you can never have enough pitching. So yeah, I'll be very curious. I want to see these bonuses to figure out how they configured this draft, just to see how it plays out. Because like I assume they're going to sign. I assume everybody in the top 10 rounds signed, and then they took one high school kid in rounds 11 through 20, and I don't know anything about him. Puerto Rico's not my half of the draft. They're going to sign almost all these guys, I would think.
Well, it's interesting with Cruz too, because he's committed to a JUCO. So we've been discussing internally whether they might draft and follow him, even just to avoid having to cut one more guy because of the domestic reserve list issue.
Right.
So that was kind of interesting. I mean, we were looking at this. They could sign all 20 guys, honestly. Like, there's no hard sign, really. I mean, I don't know what you think of Brady Tygart as a guy who was in the top 200 for you guys, but it seems like they honestly could sign every one of these guys, which is a weird, like they don't do.
Tygart, like when he's on, you could say, oh, that guy might be like a 3rd to 5th rounder, but like he's missed time the last 2 years. He had a shoulder ailment this year. It's more, I think he might be a reliever long term. He's got really good curveball. Fastball's okay, but it's like low 90s and gets hit if he doesn't command it. He's got a change up with life, but it's not a lot of velocity separation. Like I think he's going to be a breaking ball heavy reliever when all is said and done. But like he's been hurt not like he hasn't had surgery, but he got hurt, sprained elbow last year, tired arm this year, shoulder. Like I would think like you'd want to sign rather than go back and be a 4th-year senior next year. Like you're not gonna have any leverage, and what if you get hurt again? So yeah, I think it is probably a pretty signable group.
Yeah. Of the arms, I mean, does anybody in particular stand out to you? I mean, we talked and we have on our draft page the MLB pipeline rankings for these guys. So the first 3 pitchers and then Zach Earhart 2 on the offensive side, but between Tolle and Neely, Clark, any of these guys. Do you have any kind of particular arms that you thought were interesting picks for them, or that you particularly liked, entering the kind of the Breslow, Bailey, Willard pitching pipeline?
Yeah, so Tolle, I probably am lighter on than the industry as a whole. Like he's super interesting. Like he was a 2-way guy too, and I in a year it was going to be more of a power hitting first baseman than a left-handed pitcher. And then he's focused on pitching. He was Big 12 pitcher of the year.
Right.
So good news is he's 6'6", and he creates a ton of extension.
Yep.
Like I think his extension I had averages 7 feet 4 inches.
Yep.
That's pretty elite extension. And so he throws 90 to 92 miles an hour. But because he has that extension, he'll touch 96, but because he has that extension and he can run it in on lefties, board it on righties, so he can pitch into both sides of the plate. And because of the extension, he throws that pitch 75% of the time. And that works in college. I just am a little, I just don't know what to make of him, because like I think his slider is kind of average. I think his changeup's fringy. And like it's really good. Like all the metrics are really good on the fastball. But like, can you really in the big leagues throw a low 90s fastball 75% of the time?
Right.
I don't know. And like, it's not, he's big. He's not a great athlete. So it's like average control at best. So it's weird. Like, if you like him, and the Red Sox clearly do, you love his fastball metrics. And
Mhm.
then don't like him, you're like he kind of feels like a one pitch multi inning reliever. So he's interesting. Again, I mean, Craig Breslow, and I mean, we're oversimplifying things, but like, obviously the Cubs, when he was there, really improved their pitching development, and you got to give him some benefit of the doubt. I mean, the Red Sox don't care. I'll say, like, if it were me, I would not have taken Peyton Tolley in the second round. I just was not as high on him as some teams were, among
Mhm.
them like, I just don't see, and I might be totally wrong. We could play this tape 5 years from now. I just
Right.
don't see dealing with him. Like, I don't know. I just I know I'm low on him compared to some teams, and like the fastball metrics are really really good. My question kind of is, well, okay, well, what else is there? Like, and
Mhm.
I'm not sure what else there is that's really better than average. So we'll
Mhm.
see. One, I haven't even, I don't have my Red Sox top 30 in progress. I haven't started. I've started on some of my teams,
Mhm.
but I don't know. Like, to me, I don't know. It kind of feels like it fits in the 16 to 20 range. I don't know.
That's about where
Um,
we said we'd put him. I think that's what we were thinking.
I mean, I think he's full. Like, I think he's a guy. Like, I will see. I really, you can tell I'm struggling. Like, I do not know what to make of that guy at
Yeah.
all. It's the fastball is really intriguing, but again, what else is there? I don't know. So anyway, I struggle with him as I clearly am
Mhm.
expressing.
Well, and it's funny because hearing you describe him, one thing that really stood out to us with the arms, especially, is it seemed like each of them had one thing that they were really, really good at. Right. So with Tolley, it's the extension and the way his fastball moves and grades out on a
Yeah,
model. Right. They have guys that throw super hard. They have guys that have, maybe don't have the best stuff, but I think like Devin Futrell is who I'm thinking of, like, but really, really good control. Or I think it was Blake Aida out of Kennesaw, who was the one who just like one of the
he's
arms they
got
took
great
can
spin rates.
spins the hell
Spin the
out of it.
slider.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you could give his slider to Peyton Tolley, I'd be like, whoa, like that's really interesting. Like
Yeah.
Aida, I think is probably going to be a reliever also, who's
Mhm.
like slider heavy, but it's really good. But you're right. Like Brandon Neely, they took in the third round. He's interesting because, like, I guess his slider's his best pitch. He's mid 90s, coming out of the pen. Like, he's got a changeup too. Like, Florida always has a million pitchers, and they
Mhm.
all can't start. Like, I think Brandon Neely's got a better chance to start than Peyton Tolley. Now,
Mhm.
if you watched anybody who watched the college baseball playoffs, it seemed like
Right.
Brandon Neely was pitching like 3 innings every day, and like he's fiery and he's got that reliever mentality. So like he intrigues me. Like we had him ranked 193, and that might be a little bit low. Like I think there's a starter in there. Brandon Clark, he's kind of interesting too. I think he was the first JUCO pitcher taken.
Mhm.
Um, and he's left-handed and he can touch 97. Although I think it's more velocity than life. He's got a curveball that like has a chance to be a legit plus pitch. The changeup's kind of raw. Like he's raw. Like
Mhm.
I remember this correctly. So he was 21 high school kid, went to Alabama and like didn't pitch. Then he went to JUCO and didn't pitch much last year, and then kind of broke out this year. But like, he has not pitched a whole lot, so he's interesting. I think there's a lot of room for growth there. The guy who's the most intriguing is Conrad Kaysen. Like,
Yeah.
and they announced him as a two-way player, which is fine. Like, I almost wonder. I'm not going to go on my long rant. I think Shohei Ohtani has ruined two-way players for everybody. He makes it look easy.
Yeah.
And it's too hard. It's too hard. Shohei
Yeah.
is literally the most talented baseball player of all time.
Mhm.
Nobody's done this. Not even Babe Ruth.
Mhm.
Nobody at his level. It's obviously much better competition than it was 100 years ago.
Sure.
But like all these guys get drafted and announced as two-way players, And like I was getting a hard time on the desk at MLB Network. I don't even know if we talked about this on the air. It was just in rehearsals. And I was like, no, Jack Caglione, I'm having him hit. Durangelo Saintia, I'm making him a right-handed pitcher only. And they're like, but why? It's fun. I'm like, I don't care about fun. I want to win. Like, it's too hard as a two-way guy.
Right.
Like on-field stuff alone. But then if you're a pitcher, all the stuff you have to do on the days you're not pitching, you're also trying to hit. Or when you'd be working on your hitting and fielding, you're pitching part of the time. It's too hard. But anyway, with Conrad, and I don't know. Again, I have not talked to the Red Sox about this. And they probably wouldn't tell me and make this public. Like, they announced him as a two-way player. My guess is that he, like a lot of these high school players, a lot of two-way guys want to play every day if they have their choice. You remember Casey Kelly, who the Red Sox loved as a pitcher, but he wanted to play shortstop. And so the Red Sox drafted him. They let him play shortstop, and then they jacked him up to high A real quick his first full season, and he was overmatched. And they're like, hey, if you pitch, oh my gosh, the future's game. Your future might be as a pitcher. And he got to the big leagues as a pitcher. So anyway, I don't know if they prefer Kaysen as a shortstop, or they prefer him as a pitcher. If they announced him as a two-way player to help entice him to sign, I will say this: the guys I talked to liked him more as a pitcher. He's super athletic. He's like a force sport guy, 93, 95 to 98. And he can ride and sink the fastball. He kills spin. He's got a really good split grip changeup, which dives at the plate. He's got a tight slider in the low 80s that needs some development, but looks really good. He's young. Like I said, he's super athletic. And so I was like, he's a pitcher. So he went to the combine. The reason I think he might want to play shortstop, this is why I announced him as two-way guy, is he went to the combine and he's on the roster as a shortstop. But I remember MLB Network a lot of times will have me take a look, like, who should we highlight? Who are guys we want to make sure we have doing stuff while we're on the air? And I was looking at interesting guys. I was like, oh, Kayson's on there as a shortstop. Is that right? And I was like, because I always thought, like, he's a pretty interesting pitcher. Like, if he's throwing, you're going to want to see his bullpen because he'll have one of the better arms there. And they came back to me and said, hey, he actually wants to show people what he could do. Now, look, it's a combine. It's a workout setting. It's not like facing guys. But he took a good infield. He took a really good BP. He's obviously got arm strength. He's a solid runner. Like, I mean, he could be upside. I'm not saying he will be this. But you can look at him and say, hey, that guy might be like a 15-15 or 20-20 legit shortstop, which is a pretty interesting player.
Sure.
So, but I think if you made me bet on who's going to be the best pitcher from this draft, or at least have the highest, well, definitely has the highest ceiling, I would say Kayson.
Interesting. And the question I had too is what does developing a two-way player today look like? Like, what did the Cardinals do with like Mason Wynn before he decided to stick with playing short? Because
I don't
like
think he threw a lot of innings. I think a lot of times they let these, like, you sign these guys out of high school and they want to do both. And you're like, okay, because like they have more leverage. I think you kind of let them fool around with it this summer. And maybe even in instructional league. But like, and again, I don't know this, but like, if you're trying to develop him as both, that's hard. Like, is he going to pitch 100 innings and get 400 at bats last year? I mean, that's a huge toll on his body too. So we'll see. I'm very curious about him. I will say, like, I focused on him 100% as a pitcher, and then he looked pretty good at the combine. Granted, it was a workout setting. And he's like, I think he's a legit shortstop prospect, but I think he's a better pitching prospect.
That makes sense. I mean, and sometimes, look, I remember when they drafted Nazan Zanatello last year, and Devin Pearson was saying, yeah, he's going to play short, and we're going to get him some time in center field too. He hasn't played an inning outside of shortstop in the field. And I think part of that is just you get the guy in and you realize, like, okay, maybe we want to do this instead. So like you said, maybe, this fall they get him in there and they look and they say, all right, well, it was nice we drafted you as a two-way guy. Maybe they let him do it for a little while, but they've gone to this thing in the low minors where they have a 6-man rotation and like they skip the guy that starts on Tuesday, so he doesn't start till the following Sunday. So it's like a 6-man rotation on a legit 6-day schedule, even though they've got a day off. So, but they're doing stuff those other days. Like you said, they're in the lab, they're throwing these bullpens and stuff. It's not like they're just sitting around playing video games when they're not, starting. So very interested to see how they work that, because like you said, the way they worked Casey Kelly seemed so clearly designed to get
It
him to
was.
stop wanting to play shortstop.
It was like they wanted him 100% as a pitcher,
Yeah.
but they knew what they had to do. It's like it's too hard. Like I look at, and I'm not saying this is why he got hurt a lot, but I don't think it helped. Like Brendan McKay was like the best two-way player in college baseball for 3 straight years at Louisville, and he went 4th overall in the draft to the Rays, and they ran into an issue with him. And I was wrong. I thought he was better, going to be better as a hitter, and I was wrong. He was really good as a pitcher. So he was like big league ready as a pitcher pretty quick, but he was struggling in Double A as a hitter. So then you run into that problem too. Like, what do you do if the guy isn't like equally successful? Like, okay, we want him in the big leagues pitching, and they gave him some at bats in the big leagues, but he wasn't ready to hit in the big leagues. And you can't give him at bats because you're in the big league. So I'll be curious. Like he's super. He fascinates me, and I'll be very interested to see what they do with him.
You already kind of mentioned where you're at on this, so this might be a little bit of an unfair question, but you already talked about Tolley a little bit, where you'd put him. Where do you think Montgomery's going to slot? And do you think there's anyone else from this list who would probably slot in on your top 30? And again, I'm not going to hold you to it, knowing that you're not even in the draft stage.
I think Montgomery's kind of an easy number 4.
Yeah.
Like you guys haven't added the draftees yet, right?
We add them because we update monthly anyway. So with the way the signing deadline falls this year, we're just going to wait until after the August 1st deadline.
But what are you guys going to put in?
Probably 4. Yeah,
it's
like, probably
I think
4.
It's pretty clear. Like Christian Campbell is super interesting, and Blaise is tooled up, but Blaise isn't really doing anything offensively. And as much as I like Christian Campbell, the guy was a supplemental 4th round pick last year. He's kind of come out of nowhere. I would personally bank on, like, if you gave me my choice, I'm still taking Braden Montgomery. Like Christian Campbell's unbelievable year aside. Like anyway, like that's that. Like I haven't looked at it. Like I think
like it's Kayson and maybe Neely or Clark, right? I mean,
yeah. It's like it's like I don't even have a preliminary list. I should have started my Red Sox list. So I could have at least had some. It's like, yeah, I mean, I think Braden Montgomery goes at 4, and then I think
Tolley in the late teens range. That's what we said. I always
would put Kayson ahead of Tolley. I almost
interesting.
We'll see if I do. I just have, again, I know I'm light on Tolley. But like to me, it's a super interesting fastball. I just
bet on athletes.
I don't know. Anyway, Tolley, Neely, Clark, and Kayson. Like Tolley, I mean, 2nd round picks can make the list. Kayson will make the list, and then it's like Neely and Clark, Zach Earhart. I'd have to see how the bottom of the list shook out. Like they'd be in the 20s somewhere if they made the list.
And it's tough too, because I feel like the list right now, we're kind of starting our preliminary work on the August update, and it's like there's still a lot of shifting happening that isn't necessarily usual for this time of year. Like you've got guys like York reestablishing himself and trying to figure out where Franklin Arias goes now that he's blowing up. I mean, Arias just had the best week by runs created since we have our player of the week. And so we do a weekly split for guys so we can see what guys did the past week. And the week he just had in the FCL is literally the best since we started keeping track of this in 2008 by runs created. Now it's also because he had 8 steals, and runs created loves steals. And we're talking about the complex league, but it is what it is. But, and then you look further down, like you've got guys, moving around in that area too, more than usual. So things are kind of in flux. So I hear what you're saying completely. And I guess maybe that's a good segue to the system as a whole. Again, understanding you don't necessarily have your top 30 set. As far as what you've seen so far this year from this system, the big 3 still the big 3. They've performed like the big 3 more or less, at least not to put words in your mouth, but where do you think the system is?
I feel like I've been a little lighter on the system compared to some of the other media outlets recently. Not like I was killing them. Like I think B8 had them pretty high a couple years ago. Like, top heavy system that needs more pitching. Like the big 3. My mind is so addled, and I'm not looking at our top 100. Like that's as good big 3 as there is in the minors. I mean, I guess Holiday, Basayo, Kobe Mayo.
Yeah.
Like, but
they don't count. The Orioles don't count.
Take them out. I mean, that could be 2 first basemen in Jackson Holiday. Like, we're talking center fielder, shortstop, catcher.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, like it's up there and Roman Anthony got off to the slow start and like it was early, but it's like, oh, are people catching up to him? And it's like, no, Roman Anthony's fine. So like,
He's
yeah,
20.
I think all three of those guys are really good. I still go back and forth on Meyer versus Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
And then part of me is like, Teal, like, why am I not even talking about Teal for him? Teal's a catcher who's done nothing but hit. And I think he's a little underrated defensively. So like, yeah, I think you feel really good about those guys for one. I think Christian Campbell, like, I mean, that's a tremendous development success story. Like he was at Georgia Tech. I'll admit, like when I take him in the four, like we didn't rank him last year. He wasn't on our top 250, and he would show you some power and speed, like in batting practice. Like he'd show you some power, but didn't play in games, and he'd show you some speed, but he didn't really steal a lot of bases. And he's athletic, but like people are like, I'm not sure where he's going to play. And I know the Red Sox made some swing changes, and he got stronger, and he's been tremendous. So that's huge development. I think you mentioned, Arias, and I'll throw in Yoel and Cespedes before he broke the teammate. Like those two guys look tremendous. Like again, I have not done my list. I think like to me, it's the big three. It's Montgomery, and then I mean, you could say it's the Christian Campbell and those two young international shortstops are the next three best prospects in the system, like theoretically.
And if he hadn't had Tommy John Perales is probably in that group too.
Yeah, like you have to ding him some for that. Like you wish the pitching is still to me a concern. Perales looked great and then he blew out. Fitz and Stanley came over in trades. They haven't torn it up. They've been okay. It's Wickleman Gonzalez, I thought was like took a huge step forward last year, and it's gone the other direction this year. So there still is not a lot of pitching depth. But Matthew Lugo is another guy who's bounced back. York's finding himself at AAA. I think they have to be pleased with their position player depth, especially considering you got like I said, the first 7 guys on the list might be the big three: Montgomery, Campbell, and the 2 shortstops. And again, I have not thought about it. I don't know where the first pitcher comes in. I guess the first pitcher is still probably Perales, right?
Yeah, that's what we have, and that's probably what's going to be in August too. Just even dinging him, it's just that the drop from where he'd gotten to even to where he would be. It's still tough to put him too far below those 7 guys. I get, but then after that, it's kind of like Zanatello's had a tough year. Maybe York is coming back up in that group, but like Mydroth is nice, but is there going to be enough pop there?
Yeah.
It's not, and then it's trying to make, Lugo and York, 2 guys who were a first rounder and a second rounder who were top 10 guys at one point, fell off, have come back. It's like, well, how far have they really come back? York's hitting the snot out of the ball in AAA after doing nothing for 700 plate appearances in AA. How do you balance that? It's an interesting ranking exercise and trying to figure out where you slot the pitchers in after that. The Sandlins and the Fitzes and Elmer Rodriguez, who for some reason they waited until he had like 150 innings in low A before they pushed him to Greenville this week finally. But yeah, and Johan Fran Garcia was another guy that we really liked, that then he blows his knee out. So
I guess thinking about it, I probably would put Perales 8th.
Could see that.
It's funny. It's this is gonna sound weird, but like we're so immersed in the draft. And yes, we're doing some minor league stuff and we're updating. I added Christian Campbell to our list early in the season when somebody graduates. He's been mired at like number 30, or I think he's still number 30 on our list because
he might be like 28 or 29 because they graduated Abreu and Rafaela very quickly.
Yeah. So but anyway, I added him early, but I didn't go crazy because I knew for the reasons I told you. But it's weird. Like let's say they didn't graduate anybody till now, I would have added him at like number 5 on the list. And so anyway, but so I knew he was having a great year for one, but I'm not keeping up. I knew Lugo was having a pretty good year, but I couldn't have told you if you'd said, hey, give me, Zanatello's slash line. I would have been like,
right.
I haven't looked at the Zanatello in like 3 months because we're doing all this other stuff. So it's kind of fun. I wish there was more of a break between the draft and the top 30s. But it's kind of fun to dive back in and try to figure this stuff out now.
And just for the record, Campbell is at 30. I just brought the list up, which I should.
And like it's like
way,
it's like crazy. And so it's like it's weird. Like and like the problem is the way we're set up, we can't update our lists earlier. So like I don't think they're gonna. But if they were to trade, let's say they trade Christian Campbell to get Garrett Crochet, it's gonna be like Christian Campbell, MLB Pipeline's 30th ranked Red Sox. And it's like, no, he's like their 5th best prospect. But we'll get all straightened out. They'll just be shortly after the trade deadline.
Do you think, and maybe talking about that real quick, I know teams don't like the draft being this late because it impedes, like they're already trying to work on next year's draft by the time this year's draft comes around.
Trying to make trades. Like you have your special assistants who do everything are trying to look at draft guys and work on trades at the same time. Yeah.
I mean, do you think there's any chance that they tweak this more, or is MLB just so dead set on making this an all-star weekend thing that like it's entrenched?
I don't know if I mean, I don't feel like it's cemented and we're going to do this for the next 20 years, but I just, I'm trying to think how to say this. I don't think I'm going to get in trouble. I think everybody in baseball, like who works for a team, would love the draft to be back in June. Just because it pushes up too much stuff into the July calendar and it makes it very unwieldy. It just the older calendar was easier for people. As a writer who covers prospects, I would second that because there's so much going on in July. But I get asked that question all the time. I ask that question, like when I'm talking to people in scouting, we everybody asks that question to everybody else. I have not heard any rumblings that any change is imminent. Like again, I don't think we're locked in that like, hey, at least for the next 10 years, this is what we're doing. But I have not heard any change. I think if you left it up to the teams, I think they would have the draft, and you could have the draft the Tuesday after the College World Series ends on a Monday. That would be like roughly 7 or 10 days after the College World Series ended. So you could still do after the combine ended is what I meant. It would be the day after the combine. So you could still, the combine's not going anywhere. So you wouldn't have, the draft's not going to be like the first week or two of June like it used to be, but you could have it at the end of June. If you had the draft, say, June 25th or whatever, the day after the College World Series ended this year, you get everybody signed by the end of the first week of July before the All-Star break, and then you could send people out. You get guys would get playing 3-4 weeks earlier, and then you wouldn't have everything backing up. Because the reality is, outside the combine, what happens at the College World Series doesn't really matter. But like after the combine's done, you have essentially a month before the draft, and there really isn't any more information. Like you have to figure out signability, but you really aren't. Players aren't doing anything in that month that's going to change where they go. Sure. It's just like you wait a month to draft the players, and you don't really need to wait that long. And there's other stuff going on. So that was rambling.
No,
I would vote for it. I just don't know. Like I've asked and been asked that question so many times in the past 2 months, and nobody's heard any rumblings. Everybody just kind of says, "Yeah, it'd be great if it was back in June," but. I don't think it's going to be in the next couple of years that we would change.
I guess another completely unfair, similar type question is there's been rumblings about trading of draft picks, and I believe Rob Manfred may have mentioned it over All-Star weekend.
Yeah, it's funny. So there was never trading, and I've been doing this forever. So I started covering the draft like at Baseball America in 1989, and back then when people talk about trading draft picks, it was polarizing. It was like there was no in between. You either loved it or hated it. And this was the era when you had guys like Pete Incaviglia going in the top 10 picks, getting drafted by the Expos and holding out and forcing them to trade them. So then they made a rule that you couldn't trade draft picks till a year after they signed, which then got altered after Trey Turner was like player to be named limbo.
Right.
I think Tim Costo actually got traded before he was supposed to be traded, and they forgot about it or something. Anyway, so back then there was this concern of like, like these high-powered agents are going to control and they'll make all the good players go to the Yankees because they'll demand trades. And then that's just not going to happen now. Like now, I think most people were fine with trades. I guess it was 3 CBAs ago they put in that you could trade the competitive balance picks. And everybody thought we're going to see how this goes, and then in the next CBA we'll have trading and draft picks. And like, though, I don't think it'll be, hey, I can trade you a 19th rounder. Like, I'm sure it'll be limited to the number of rounds, and I'm sure they're going to limit how many years in the future you could trade draft picks. Like, you can't trade a draft pick 6 years from now. But it would make my job harder. Like, for like, one of the great things about, like, not that you get the picks right, but like, a lot of teams are pretty transparent or open, talking about different things they might do with the draft. Because you, like, if a team tells, like, if everybody knows that, say, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's use this year's draft. Let's say everybody knows that the Pirates want Connor Griffin at 9, and the Angels are looking to cut a deal at 8. Well, what if you what if the Red Sox really wanted Connor Griffin? Then they could trade up with the Pirates. I mean, trade up with the Angels, get that pick. The Angels could still take Christian Moore and save money and get like something extra in the deal. So like, I feel like teams would be less open, or a little more guarded. So like, would you be like, NFL writers talk all the time about how everybody lies to the NFL writers about the draft picks because of the trading, because you can trade all the picks in the NFL. Yep. But I think it would create interest. I think it would be a lot of interest. Like, I don't know that the drafts, because people don't know the players, is going to be as well watched as the NFL draft. But like, what if on draft night somebody traded, like, I'm trying to think of let's say the Pirates decide we're going to go all in and we're trading the number 9 pick to the White Sox in a deal. We're getting Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert as part of that deal. Like, or if you had trades like that going on, I think people would be tuned in like, hey, is something going to happen during the draft? So I think it would be good for baseball. The problem is, I don't even really think anybody's opposed to trading draft picks with some sort of limitations. I think the two issues is that the last couple, the CBA negotiations are often contentious. And so, even though I don't think either side really is against it, like, if you ask for something, then the other side wants to know, what are you going to give up for it? So that's one issue. And then even if both sides were like, hey, we both are for this, let's just do it. Like, the last CBA, we had a lockout, and then they had to like scramble at the end to get a CBA in place so we didn't lose games in the regular season. Is that to trade draft picks, like, they almost should be talking about it now.
Right.
Like it's not a big ticket issue. Let's just get the small stuff out of the way or start discussing it. And like, and I don't know what's going on if they're having CBA talks, but like, you should get the little stuff out of the way. Cause like, if it gets to the end and we have contentious negotiations again, they're not going to sit the time to figure out exactly what they should do about trading of draft picks.
It's interesting to me that in that last CBA with the lockout, they got to a lot of this minor league stuff at all. And I guess it was fairly hot button at the time with, I guess that was the CBA where they did the 120 plan and everything, right? So maybe it was a big ticket item in that.
I know. I think they tried to put in. They wanted to be able to cut from like 185 to 165.
That's what it was. And
the union was like, no, like again, that was kind of thrown. And it was like the international draft where they want to have an international draft, and they kind of put some stuff in there, and the union's like, we're not going to do this without like those types of things. I think could happen. It's just they need to discuss them, and if you have some acrimony and then you're scrambling to get the deal done, like they're like, I'm paraphrasing here, like, let's just not worry about trading draft picks. Like, we got our stuff we got to figure out.
Makes sense. Jim, we got some great emails from our listeners. I thought doing a couple of them here with you would be kind of fun if your game. Our first one, which is, it's more of a concept sort of question, but I think it's a good one, especially to talk about with you, because I know we've talked about it. Andrew asks, flash forward to 2032, what is the minimum that would have to happen over the next 8 years for you to consider the 2024 draft a good draft for the Red Sox? And I think it's, even just the bigger concept of what realistically constitutes a successful MLB draft class for a team.
You knew I was going to like this question because I talk about this all the time. I think people don't realize how hard the draft, like in any sport, like, it's funny. I actually think NFL picks and NBA picks wash out as much as MLB picks. It's just when they wash out in MLB, if a first round pick busts, they don't get to the big leagues. In the NFL or NBA, they just wind up stinking at that level, but they aren't good. Like they aren't factors. Right. Like, it's not like those teams are better. It's just the draft is hard. And like, so I actually had this stick down. I probably said this to you before, Chris. So one, in a typical draft, there are generally 6 or 8 star level players, if you're fortunate. And then there might be another 12 in a really good draft, maybe 24 players who are solid regulars or starters or quality relievers. And then after that, you're going to have guys who have good years here and there. You're going to have a cup of coffee players. But there really aren't this notion that everybody's getting an all-star and a Hall of Famer in the first. And the way I know this is just from having studied the draft forever. But every year, MLB has me do a redraft 10 years after the fact. Now that we know what we know, how would the draft play out? So I've called up my 2014 redraft. There were 34 picks, 34 first-round picks in 2014. I'm going to give you, we'll see how far I get till we get to a player you're like, oh, that guy's really good. The 34th best player when I did this, and maybe it would be a little different a couple months later, was Brock Burke. Brock Burke would have been a first-round pick. 33rd best pick, which was the Red Sox pick where they took Michael Kopech, was Ryan Yarbrough. The 32nd best pick was Eric Swanson. 31st best pick, and I think it was an all-star of the year, was Jeff Hoffman. But we're still talking relievers here. 30th best pick, Austin Gomber. The 29th best pick was J.D. Davis. I'm just going to keep going. Spencer Turnbull, Connor Joe, Austin Slater, Jose Trevino, Brian Anderson. I mean, Stone Garrett. I mean, these aren't guys you build your team around.
Right.
Kopech I had as the 22nd best big leaguer. You know, Tanner Scott, John Means, like I'm up into the 20th best players taken. Like 19th best is Jack Flaherty, and he's had a good year. But like, I mean, those are guys, like, I don't think anybody's thinking like when they're drafting their first round pick. I don't think like the teams who are picking in the first round this year going, man, I hope we'll get Austin Gomber. No offense to Austin Gomber. Like you're thinking we're getting a better guy. Like, hey man, if we get JD Davis, we're doing pretty good. Like, they're not thinking that. Like, so to answer the question, if Brandon Montgomery is as good as everybody thinks he could be, that alone is going to be a good draft because you're going to have gotten one of the top 10 or 12 players in the draft. I go, is he going to be one of those true stars or is he going to be one of those solid players? It could go either way. But if he's one of those guys, you're coming out ahead of half, roughly half the teams in baseball. And then if you get one other guy who's, say a 4 or 5 year big leaguer, whether, if you got a guy who's like an everyday player, even if it was a guy or, number 4 or 5 starter, you'd be doing really, really well. Like realistically. And I don't care. Like, it's funny. Like a lot of times people look at drafts like, oh, they got 8 big leaguers. I don't care how many big leaguers you got. Tell me how good they are. I'd rather if you get 8 big leaguers and they combine for 12 WAR, I'd rather just have 1 10 WAR player. No, I'm serious. Like,
no, it makes sense.
Because I can go out and get and replicate the other guys. I mean, they're not as cheap as getting them through the draft. But so anyway, they're kind of set up. If Bray Montgomery is what people think he is, and like they hit on one other guy, then it's gonna be a pretty good draft.
That's fair.
Like the draft, like you like to have those drafts where you hit on 4 or 5 guys, but like that almost never happens.
That makes sense. We've got a question here from Drew who asks, with all the talk of how this year's draft was relatively weak, I was wondering where you would slot the 2024 version, and this is kind of tough, of Braden Montgomery relative to the pre-draft rankings of the 2023 draft prospects. So would he be in the Teal Dollander tier or closer to the likes of Mitchell, Shaw, Namala? And how does your
back and look at our list? Yeah, it's he wouldn't be like you had that tier, the crazy, Skeens, Cruz, Langford, Clark, Jenkins, like there was like a really deep top tier. I do think Bray Montgomery would be in that. We had Namala ranked too high. We probably had Colin Houck ranked too high in retrospect. But like he'd be in that second tier. Like he'd be like I'd put Louder. I'm just like Louder, Teal. Like he'd probably be behind Louder and Teal. Dollander's interesting because Dollander didn't have a great spring. He lowered his arm slot. And a lot of people thought, like, if you just fix the arm slot, he'll be pretty good, and he'll get back to where he was. And then he did. He raised his arm slot. And he's good again. But yeah, he'd be. Where do we have Montgomery? 8, I think, on our rankings this year. He'd be. Depending on how you want to put him, he'd be. I mean, he'd definitely be ahead of Namala and Colin Houck. I'm not just saying that. So you take the guy who had success in the SEC over the high school guys. So I think he'd be probably at worst 10th. Last year. So even though this year's draft was not as good as last year's, he'd rank pretty much roughly the same area.
That sounds right. Wanted to give a shout out to Aaron, who asked about the draftees timeline of the majors, which we kind of did talk about already. Want to make sure we knew that they weren't ignoring the question. And this is an interesting one, Jim, and I don't know if you've been able to talk to teams about this, but a question from Nick G, who says, if asks if there are any teams feeling the pinch of the condensed domestic reserve list, which you did mention earlier, and which we
yes.
talk about all the time, especially right now, because teams are going to have to cut like 10 guys to add draftees mid-year. Have you talked to
Yeah,
teams that are really feeling that pinch?
yeah, I think everybody is. I think two ways. One, just from a logistical standpoint of fielding rock, because like there's a lot more minor leaguers who are injured on injured lists. I think that people realize, and so we're at, was it 165 now?
Yeah.
I think the number. But there's some teams, like I saw somebody tweeting, maybe it was Baseball America. There was a team that had 39 guys on their injured list, and then you talk about pitchers rest and guys moving up and down. Like it's sometimes hard to feel like that's one of the reasons they moved the complex league seasons earlier in the year, is so those guys would be available to play an A ball if needed at the end of the year rather than playing concurrently. But yeah, so teams are feeling the pinch in terms of, trying to field optimal lineups with teams. And then two, like you allude to with the cutting, like if you like, I think everybody feels like they're good at player acquisition and player development. Like most teams, unless they're just caring about saving money, would rather have more players. And like, if you do a really good job in player development, like there's sometimes teams that feel like they have to cut players who, if they were given a chance to develop further, might be big leaguers. But yeah, no, it's definitely a pinch in both of those regards. Like I think, much like the draft, if you asked player development officials to vote, they would all love to have bigger roster. Like I think they'd like to have more minor league teams if that was doable.
Sure.
But it just isn't right now. But yeah, it's a definite concern managing rosters with a limit on how many players you can have, because once you start dealing with injuries, it's tough.
I saw that there are teams that are signing like upwards of 10 undrafted free agents. Are those teams just not signing a bunch of their draftees? Like, I don't even understand how there are systems that can add that many guys, or do they just think they've got that many guys they're going to release, or how does that even work?
Like that stuff, like you don't see all the trade. Like there's that. Like I think if you have a guy on the 60-day IL,
they don't count, but there's only 15 60-day IL slots. So it's
I don't know how they're doing it. I wonder that too. Like I think the answer is we just don't necessarily see the guys who are getting cut.
Sure.
All the guys to make room for them.
Sure. That makes sense. I mean, I'm guessing there's going to be a fair number of like FCL types that just, instead of getting released in the offseason, they're going to get released now, is kind of my guess.
Yeah.
But fair enough. All right. Well, Jim, you've been very generous with your time. I think I've kept you on here for more than an hour from when we started the call.
Oh, it's always fun talking to you, Chris.
But it's same here. We always appreciate it. And then of course, everyone check out Jim's stuff on MLB Pipeline, Twitter at Jim Callis MLB, I believe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where else is there? Obviously MLB Network during the draft and stuff. Although that's over at this point. Where else can people find your stuff? Anywhere I'm forgetting?
Well, if there's Cubs fans listening to your podcast, I do some stuff for Marquee Network. We do a minor league wraparound show. We've got another one coming up, I feel like August 19th or something. But yeah, I usually try to tweet everywhere I am. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll get that. But yeah, no, it's always fun talking to you guys. And I mean, I know I say this every time, and I mean it sincerely. I do think you guys are the gold standard of prospect sites for major league clubs, especially independent, that aren't covering everything. I mean, the thoroughness with which you guys cover the Red Sox, I enjoy it. I mean, just also, I mean, the hardest thing I think is in finding injury information. And I can't tell you how many times over the years I'll be like, oh, I don't know why this guy missed a month here in May. And then I'll go to Sox prospect, or I'll Google it, and the result will be a Sox prospects answer. Like you guys are on top of so many players in the Red Sox system, and cover them so well, and the reports are really good. Like the detailed reports. Like I said, I wish, I wish at least the 10 teams I have to do top 30s for, the other 9 teams all had sites as good as Sox prospects. It's like you guys just do amazing work.
Well, we always appreciate it, Jim. And as I joke every year, the check is in the mail. So we
Well,
no,
but
we
I mean,
appreciate
it's
it.
really, and I think, I mean, I have to think you guys know that the Red Sox appreciate it, because I think you get pretty good cooperation with the Red Sox, and like, it's great for the team to have, media like I mean, I cover prospects, but I can't. I do our Red Sox top 30. I can't cover it in the depth that you guys do 24/7, 365. I have 9 other
Mhm.
teams I have to do top 30s for. I have the draft of all this other stuff. I can't do that. I mean, how many people work for Sox prospects or write for you guys?
I mean, the brass is there's 4 of us on ownership, and then we've got at any time between like 12 and 20 or
Yeah,
so people who,
yeah. I mean, it's
do it
tremendous.
for the love
Well,
of
but
the
anyway,
game, right?
yeah.
So,
Hey, but what I was gonna say is like, I don't. Even if I wanted to, I mean, it'd be great if I had the. I don't have time to do that. I couldn't do the work of
mhm,
20 people or
mhm,
16 people or however many or all that. Like, I have to do all this other stuff too.
right.
So it's just like again. I mean, I know there's times where I've just talked to Red Sox and it's come up and they're like, yeah, those guys do a really good job. Or like sometimes I'll be asking about a player, like somebody who pops out of nowhere, and they'll be like, oh, we'll talk about him, and I'll be like, hey, Sox Prospects had a good story on that guy or had some good background on him. You should check it out. Like, so you guys, no check is in the mail. It's a figurative check, but
Mhm.
like you guys do unbelievable work. So it's
Well,
I always enjoy coming on, and I read your guys' site religiously.
well, we appreciate it, and you've been extremely kind with your time and your um and your opinions and your thoughts and your help for a long time, even before we had kind of gotten to the point we're at now, where not take it for granted, but where we kind of have the connections we have. So we've always been grateful to you for that, and we appreciate it. So
Yeah,
for that, and then of course, we were talking a little bit before the show. Congrats on everything with MLB Network and the website and stuff you're doing, but also 4 college degrees, 3 masters, and a partridge in a pear tree, I guess. And the Callis family is
yeah.
also an awesome accomplishment, I
Thank
think,
you.
to hear. So
Yeah.
that's
The kids are
sure.
doing well.
Yeah.
We only have 2 masters.
Or
Our
2
youngest
masters. Sorry.
is about to begin her master's program,
Got
but
it.
we will. My wife
Got it.
has a master's, so I guess technically we have 3. So,
Okay.
um,
Fair enough. Fair enough. We'll add another one soon, but that's awesome
yes,
too. And look, here's the thing, right? I mean, I've got like a cat and a dog. The cat who you've seen, people aren't going
yes,
to see the
yes.
video. The cat's been walking back and forth on screen, and Jim has not been distracted, and that's been impressive. But it's a lot easier to focus when you've got a cat and a dog to worry about, as opposed to an entire family of human beings to deal with. So,
Well, and we've got right now we've kind of taken in one of our oldest sons, Goldens, who needed more training. I think he's become our dog. So we have 4 Goldens and a cat, and our youngest daughter's 1.5-year-old Golden is visiting for the summer until
oh,
she
so
goes
that's
to
the 5th I
UNC.
saw. Got it.
So yeah, we have 5 Goldens and a cat, but like they're relatively. I have people cannot see this. You can't see it from the angle, but I have 2 Goldens sound asleep on the floor behind me right now. So
Nice. All right. Well, so
and
don't step
hopefully the
on them
other
when you get
3
up.
are not. Hopefully the other 3 are not causing chaos.
Well, I'll let you go check on that.
Well, my wife's upstairs, so if they were,
Okay.
I think
Should be running around. Awesome. Well, Jim, it's always a pleasure, and we'll definitely do it again soon.
Yeah, anytime, Chris. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it.